Centurion Lucius Varro stood at attention in the stark, dimly lit briefing room. The walls were adorned with hollow banners bearing the insignia of the Deathcallers, a black skull wreathed in flames, and the emblem of the Drydus Confederation. Beside him, the other centurions stood in disciplined silence, their faces grim and resolute, each of them a paragon of military prowess and unwavering loyalty. The room fell into complete silence as the central holographic display flickered to life. The intricate details of the once great city of Aradia materialized in front of them, the grid of streets and towering skyscrapers, now a battlefield. The city, once home to 20 million souls, was now an empty shell infested with enemies. The image of Emperor Julius Franco, robed in imperial garb, appeared within the hologram. His voice, a blend of authority and urgency, resonated through the chamber. Centurions, Aradia has fallen to the enemy. Our intelligence is vague, but we estimate up to 1 million hostiles now occupy the city. They are well entrenched and well armed. Their command structure is hidden somewhere within the urban sprawl. Lucius felt a surge of adrenaline. The Deathcallers thrived in situations where the odds were steep and the stakes high. The Emperor's words were a call to arms, a challenge to their elite status. Your mission is twofold, Emperor Franco continued. Neutralize enemy forces and locate their command. We need precise strikes and overwhelming force. Collateral damage is not a concern. We drop you at night, under the cover of darkness. Surprise will be your ally. The hologram shifted, zooming in on key strategic points within Aradia. The labyrinthine streets and towering structures presented both an opportunity and a threat. Lucius studied the map intently, memorizing the layout, noting potential choke points and ambush sites. The enemy is numerous and their positions fortified, but remember, they are not invincible. The Emperor's voice took on a steely edge. The Deathcallers have never failed the Confederation. I expect nothing less than total success. Dismissed. The hologram vanished, leaving the room in silence once more. Lucius turned to his fellow centurions, their eyes meeting in a shared understanding. This was more than a mission, it was a testament to their prowess and dedication. Prepare your men, Lucius ordered, his voice steady. We drop in 1 hour. Equip for close quarters and heavy resistance. Ensure every soldier understands the stakes. As the centurions filed out to brief their respective centurias, Lucius lingered a moment, staring at the now dark holographic display. The weight of the mission pressed upon him, but so too did the thrill of the challenge. Aradia would be their crucible, and they would emerge victorious or not at all. He moved with purpose towards the armory, his mind already running through strategies and contingencies. The Deathcallers were about to descend into the heart of darkness, and Lucius Varro would lead them every step of the way. The stealth dropships glided silently over the sprawling ruins of Aradia, their matte black hulls blending seamlessly with the night sky. Inside one of the lead ships, Centurion Lucius Varro stood amidst his centuria, 100 elite Deathcallers, the finest soldiers of the Drydus Confederation. The interior lights were dimmed to a red hue, casting eerie shadows over their armored forms. Lucius checked his gear for the third time, ensuring every piece was in place. His armor, a composite of advanced alloys and ceramics, was designed to withstand the harshest of battles. The helmet, equipped with an advanced HUD, offered real-time data and thermal imaging. His weapons, a plasma rifle and a serrated combat knife, were secured and ready. Around him, his men did the same, their movements precise and disciplined. Final check, Deathcallers, Lucius commanded, his voice calm yet authoritative. We fast rope in 60 seconds. The cityscape of Aradia stretched below them, a dark and hostile labyrinth of shattered buildings and deserted streets. Once a vibrant metropolis teeming with life, it now lay in ruins, overtaken by enemy forces. The dropships hovered above a towering skyscraper, their engines barely a whisper in the night. Lucius approached the open bay door, the wind whipping against his armor. He peered down at the city below, his mind racing through the mission parameters. They were to infiltrate, disrupt, and annihilate. Collateral damage was not a concern, the enemy had to be eradicated. Ropes out, Lucius shouted. The soldiers moved with practiced precision, deploying the ropes and securing their descent harnesses. Lucius took a deep breath, the cold air filling his lungs, and then he leaped into the void. The rapid descent was exhilarating, the ground rushing up to meet them. The rest of his centuria followed, their dark figures blending into the night. They landed on the rooftop with barely a sound, their boots making only the faintest thuds against the concrete. Lucius signaled for a perimeter check, and his men fanned out, securing the area in seconds. The rooftop offered a panoramic view of the devastated city, a reminder of what had been lost and what they were fighting to reclaim. "Move out," Lucius ordered, his voice a low whisper in the comms. "We're taking the north stairwell. Stay sharp." The Deathcallers moved as one, a silent, lethal force. They descended into the building, their weapons at the ready, senses attuned to the slightest hint of danger. The interior was dark, lit only by the pale glow of emergency lights casting long shadows across the walls. The air was thick with dust and the lingering scent of decay. Lucius led the way, his HUD mapping the building's layout as they advanced. Each floor brought new challenges, remnants of the city's former life now twisted into potential threats. They encountered sporadic resistance, small groups of enemy scouts quickly and efficiently neutralized by the Deathcallers' superior training and firepower. As they reached the lower levels, the sounds of the city distant explosions, the rattle of gunfire grew louder. The true battle awaited them in the streets below. Lucius paused at the final doorway, turning to address his men. "Remember your training. Trust your gear and your brothers. We are the Deathcallers. We bring death to the enemies of Drydus. Move out." With that, they breached the door and spilled into the streets of Aradia, the mission truly begun. The city, a vast battlefield, lay before them, and the Deathcallers were ready to meet the challenge head-on. The Deathcallers moved with silent efficiency through the dimly lit corridors of the skyscraper. Their boots barely made a sound on the cold, tiled floors. Lucius Varro led the charge, his plasma rifle at the ready. The building, once a symbol of Aradia's prosperity, was now a maze of shadows and debris, each corner a potential ambush. The first sign of resistance came as they rounded a corner on the 50th floor. Enemy troops, alerted by the noise of their entry, had taken defensive positions. Lucius spotted them first, their dark uniforms blending into the gloom. He raised his rifle and fired, the bright blue plasma bolts cutting through the air with deadly precision. "Contact," Lucius barked. "Engage." The Deathcallers spread out, using doorways and furniture as cover. Plasma fire and the sharp retort of slug throwers filled the air. Lucius moved forward, his shots precise, each one finding its mark. The enemy troops, less disciplined and poorly trained, faltered under the onslaught. "Flamethrowers, clear them out," Lucius ordered. Two Deathcallers stepped forward, their flamethrowers roaring to life. Jets of fire surged down the corridor, igniting everything in their path. The enemy screamed and fell back, their makeshift barricades turning to ash. The smell of burning flesh and melting plastic filled the air, but the Deathcallers pressed on, undeterred. They reached the enemy position, finding only charred bodies and smoldering ruins. Lucius signaled for a quick perimeter check before moving deeper into the building. Each floor presented new challenges: entrenched enemies, booby traps, and narrow choke points. The Deathcallers faced each obstacle with the same grim determination. On the 40th floor, they encountered a larger force. The enemy had fortified the area, turning offices into bunkers and hallways into killing fields. Lucius assessed the situation quickly. "Deploy grenades," he ordered. "Clear a path." Explosions rocked the floor as grenades flew through doorways and around corners. The enemy's defenses crumbled under the assault. Lucius led the charge, his plasma rifle blazing. They moved swiftly, eliminating pockets of resistance with brutal efficiency. The enemy fell back in disarray, unable to withstand the Deathcallers' relentless advance. By the time they reached the 30th floor, the resistance had weakened. The Deathcallers cleared room after room, their flamethrowers and explosives leaving a trail of destruction. Lucius's HUD flickered with updates from his men, each floor marked as secure. "Top floors are clear," Lucius reported into his comm. "Begin descent to the lower levels. Stay sharp." The Deathcallers moved towards the stairwell, their weapons ready. They descended cautiously, aware that the enemy would be waiting. The lower they went, the closer they got to the heart of the conflict raging in the streets of Aradia. As they reached the 20th floor, the enemy resistance intensified. Ambushes and traps slowed their progress, but the Deathcallers adapted, their training and superior firepower turning the tide in each engagement. Lucius led them with unwavering focus, his commands clear and decisive. "Keep pushing," he urged. "We're almost at the ground level." The final floors were a blur of gunfire and explosions. The Deathcallers fought with ruthless efficiency, their flamethrowers and grenades devastating enemy positions. By the time they reached the ground floor, the once imposing skyscraper was a smoldering ruin, its defenders annihilated. Lucius took a moment to regroup his men. They had cleared the building, but the true challenge lay ahead. The streets of Aradia awaited, filled with enemy troops and fortified positions. The Deathcallers had proven their mettle, but the battle was far from over. "Prepare to move out," Lucius ordered, his voice calm and steady. "We've secured the high ground. Now we take the city." With that, the Deathcallers stepped out into the war-torn streets of Aradia, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The moment the Deathcallers stepped onto the streets of Aradia, they were met with a wall of chaos. The city's once orderly grid of roads and buildings was now a twisted battlefield, every corner a potential death trap. Lucius Varro led his centuria with unwavering determination, their movements precise and coordinated despite the bedlam around them. The enemy, fully aware of the Deathcallers' presence, had regrouped and fortified their positions. Machine gun fire and sniper shots rang out from windows and rooftops, forcing the elite soldiers to take cover behind wrecked vehicles and crumbling walls. The night sky was illuminated by the flashes of explosions and the streaks of tracer fire. "Return fire. Suppressive fire on those rooftops," Lucius commanded, his voice cutting through the din. The Deathcallers responded instantly, their plasma rifles sending searing bolts of energy toward the enemy positions. Flamethrowers roared to life, their jets of fire turning makeshift barricades into infernos. Grenades were launched with deadly accuracy, blasting entrenched enemies from their cover. As they advanced, buildings erupted in fire and debris, the sound of collapsing structures mixing with the screams of the dying. The Deathcallers moved methodically, their superior training evident in every maneuver. They took advantage of every piece of cover, every shadow, their black armor making them nearly invisible in the night. Lucius's HUD displayed a constant stream of data: enemy positions, friendly locations, and mission objectives. He used this information to direct his men with precision, ensuring that each squad covered the other as they leapfrogged from building to building. "Squad Alpha, take the left flank. Squad Bravo, secure the right. Keep moving, don't let them pin us down," Lucius ordered, his eyes scanning for threats. The Centuria pushed forward, their advance unstoppable. Enemy troops tried to hold their ground, but the Deathcallers' relentless assault broke their lines. Lucius moved at the front, his plasma rifle blazing, each shot finding its mark. His men followed, their flamethrowers and explosives clearing a path of destruction. As they neared a major intersection, the enemy launched a desperate counterattack. Mortar rounds exploded around them, sending shards of metal and concrete flying. Lucius signaled for his men to take cover, their armor absorbing the brunt of the shrapnel. "Hold position. Return fire with everything you've got," Lucius shouted. The Deathcallers unleashed a torrent of plasma and fire, the night lit by the ferocity of their assault. Enemy troops fell back under the onslaught, their morale breaking. Lucius saw his opportunity. "Push forward. Break their lines," he commanded. With a coordinated surge, the Deathcallers charged the intersection. Grenades flew, detonating in the midst of the enemy, while flamethrowers swept the area clean. The enemy's defense crumbled, their remaining forces retreating in disarray. Lucius led his men through the smoke and flames, their advance relentless. They secured the intersection, setting up a temporary command post amidst the ruins. The street was littered with the debris of battle, the acrid smell of burning fuel and scorched earth filling the air. "Report," Lucius demanded, his eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement. "Minimal casualties, sir. Enemy resistance is weakening, But they're still heavily fortified in the southern sector, a sergeant replied. Lucius nodded, his mind already formulating the next steps. The battle for Aradia was far from over, but the Deathcallers had made significant progress. Each enemy position they destroyed brought them closer to their ultimate goal. Prepare to move out, Lucius ordered. We continue the assault. No quarter for the enemy. We take this city one block at a time. With that, the Deathcallers reformed their ranks, ready to plunge back into the inferno. The city of Aradia, now a battlefield, would feel the full might of the Confederation's finest. Lucius Varro and his Centuria would stop at nothing to achieve victory. The Deathcallers moved cautiously through the shattered streets of Aradia, the silence between battles almost as unnerving as the firefights. The city's oppressive atmosphere was shattered by the sudden crack of sniper fire. Lucius Varro barely had time to react before one of his men went down, a precise shot piercing the armor at a joint. Snipers. Take cover, Lucius shouted, diving behind a burnt-out vehicle. His HUD flickered with danger indicators, marking the suspected sniper positions. The Deathcallers scrambled for cover, finding shelter behind rubble and within the ruins of buildings. The enemy had dug in, determined to halt their advance. Heavy machine guns opened up from fortified positions, the air filled with the deafening roar of sustained fire. Bullets ricocheted off walls and vehicles, the sheer volume of fire making movement impossible. Bravo Squad, lay down suppressive fire, Lucius ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. Alpha Squad, prep for air support. The Deathcallers followed his commands with practiced precision. Bravo Squad's plasma rifles and grenades created a wall of energy and shrapnel, forcing the snipers and machine gunners to momentarily retreat. Lucius activated his comm unit, connecting directly with the dropships orbiting above. Air support. This is Centurion Varro. Request immediate strike on designated coordinates. Enemy strongpoints heavily fortified. Authorization code Delta 579. The response was immediate. Acknowledged, Centurion. Targets locked. Missiles incoming in 30 seconds. Mark your positions. Lucius relayed the timing to his men. Missiles inbound. Hold your positions and brace for impact. The Deathcallers hunkered down, their armor shielding them as best it could. Moments later, the sky lit up as the dropships unleashed their payload. Missiles streaked down, their contrails visible against the night sky. The ground shook with the force of the explosions, buildings collapsing and enemy fortifications disintegrating under the barrage. The air was filled with dust and debris, the noise of the explosions almost deafening. Lucius risked a glance over his cover, his HUD showing the enemy positions in disarray. The machine guns had fallen silent, the snipers' nests obliterated. Advance. Push through the ruins and eliminate any survivors, Lucius commanded, rising from cover. The Deathcallers surged forward with renewed vigor, their spirits bolstered by the devastating air support. They moved quickly and efficiently, their weapons trained on the remaining enemy positions. The destruction wrought by the missiles had thrown the enemy into disarray, their once formidable defenses now nothing more than smoldering ruins. Lucius led the charge, his plasma rifle cutting down enemies with ruthless precision. His men followed, their flamethrowers and explosives ensuring no hostile could regroup. The streets were littered with the debris of battle, the acrid smell of smoke and burning flesh permeating the air. Every step forward was hard fought, the enemy putting up a desperate resistance. But the Deathcallers were relentless, their superior training and equipment giving them the edge. They cleared building after building, their progress marked by the trail of destruction they left in their wake. At a particularly fortified intersection, Lucius spotted a group of enemy soldiers attempting to set up another machine gun nest. He motioned to one of his men, who hefted a grenade launcher and fired. The explosive round sailed through the air, landing amidst the enemy with a deafening blast. The soldiers were thrown like rag dolls, the machine gun twisted and broken. Keep moving. We have them on the run, Lucius urged, his voice cutting through the din of battle. The Deathcallers pressed on, their determination unwavering. With each enemy strong point they obliterated, the path to victory became clearer. Lucius could see the enemy's will to fight waning. their resistance faltering in the face of the Deathcallers' unrelenting assault. As they pushed deeper into the city, Lucius knew the mission was far from over. The enemy command still eluded them, and the heart of Aradia was still a battleground. But with each step, each victory, they drew closer to their goal. The Deathcallers would not rest until Aradia was reclaimed, and the enemy was vanquished. Lucius raised his plasma rifle and led his men forward, ready to face whatever came next. The battle for Aradia raged on, but the Deathcallers were unstoppable, their path marked by fire and fury. The battle raged as the Deathcallers pushed deeper into the heart of Aradia. The city's desolate streets and shattered buildings were a testament to the ferocity of the conflict. Amid the ruins of an apartment complex, Centurion Lucius Varro led his men with relentless precision. The Deathcallers methodically cleared the area, searching for any remaining pockets of resistance. "Move in. Check every room," Lucius ordered, his voice steady over the comms. "We're looking for intel." As his men spread out, Lucius moved through the rubble-strewn corridors, his plasma rifle at the ready. The building, once a home to hundreds of families, was now a war zone. The sound of distant gunfire and explosions echoed through the hallways. "Centurion, we found something," one of his men called out. Lucius quickly made his way to the location, finding a squad of Deathcallers standing over a captured enemy officer. The man was bound and on his knees, his uniform marking him as a high-ranking official. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye, and his face was a mask of defiance and fear. "Identify yourself," Lucius demanded, his tone leaving no room for resistance. The officer spat on the ground, refusing to speak. Lucius knelt in front of him, his cold eyes meeting the officer's. "You can make this easy, or you can make it painful," Lucius said quietly. "Where are your generals?" The officer's silence was met with a nod from Lucius. One of the Deathcallers stepped forward, a brutal-looking knife in his hand. The blade gleamed in the dim light as it pressed against the officer's throat. "Last chance," Lucius warned. "Where are your generals?" Fear finally broke the officer's defiance. Underground, he gasped. "They're in the metro system, beneath the old government district." Lucius stood, satisfied. He turned to his men. "Prepare to move out. We're heading to the metro entrance. Stay alert, the enemy won't let us pass easily." The Deathcallers regrouped, their ranks tight and disciplined. Lucius led them through the devastated streets, their pace quick but cautious. The path to the metro entrance was fraught with danger, and the enemy would undoubtedly be prepared to defend it fiercely. As they approached the entrance, they encountered sporadic resistance. Small groups of enemy soldiers tried to slow their advance, but the Deathcallers cut them down with ruthless efficiency. Plasma fire and explosions marked their progress, the enemy unable to mount a significant defense against the elite troops. The entrance to the metro system loomed ahead, a gaping maw in the side of a ruined building. Lucius signaled for his men to halt and take cover. He surveyed the area, noting the potential ambush points and chokeholds. "Alpha and Bravo squads, flank the entrance," Lucius ordered. "Charlie squad, cover our rear. We move in fast and hit hard. No hesitation." The Deathcallers moved into position, their movements synchronized and silent. Lucius gave the signal, and they launched their assault. Grenades exploded, and flamethrowers roared to life, clearing the way. The enemy defenders fell back, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the attack. Lucius led the charge into the metro entrance, his plasma rifle blazing. The underground tunnels stretched out before them, dark and foreboding. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and the distant sounds of combat. "Keep moving," Lucius urged his men. "We need to find those generals and finish this." The Deathcallers advanced into the depths of the metro system, their path lit by the flickering lights of their helmets. The enemy's last stand awaited them, but Lucius was determined. The capture of the enemy officer had given them the information they needed, and now it was time to strike the final blow. As they moved deeper into the underground maze, Lucius felt a surge of anticipation. The mission was nearing its climax, and the Deathcallers would stop at nothing to ensure victory. The underground metro system, once a bustling hub of civilian life, would now become the battleground where the fate of Aradia was decided. The entrance to the metro system was a dark, yawning chasm, its depths obscured by shadows. Centurion Lucius Varro led his Deathcallers into the abyss, their helmet lights casting long beams that danced across the grime-covered walls. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay, a stark contrast to the sterile, high-tech battlefields they were used to. "Stay alert," Lucius warned, his voice steady through the comms. "These tunnels will amplify every sound. Use it to our advantage, but be prepared for ambushes." The Deathcallers advanced cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The metro tunnels were a maze of tracks and platforms, every turn and junction a potential death trap. The first wave of enemies hit them as they rounded a bend, a hail of gunfire and plasma bolts cutting through the darkness. "Contact. Return fire," Lucius shouted. The confined space turned the skirmish into a brutal, close-quarters battle. Plasma bolts lit up the tunnel in bursts of blinding light, the crack of weapons fire echoing off the walls. The Deathcallers moved with lethal efficiency, their training and superior firepower cutting through the enemy ranks. Flamethrowers roared to life, turning the narrow passageways into infernos. "Push forward. Don't let them regroup," Lucius ordered. They advanced through the chaos, their progress marked by the bodies of fallen enemies. The confined quarters intensified every confrontation, but the Deathcallers' discipline never wavered. Lucius led from the front, his plasma rifle a beacon of death. His men followed, their every move calculated and precise. As they neared the central hub of the metro system, the enemy resistance grew fiercer. Heavy machine guns and makeshift barricades slowed their advance, but the Deathcallers pressed on, their resolve unbreakable. Grenades and explosives cleared the way, the echoes of their blasts reverberating through the tunnels. Almost there, Lucius muttered, his eyes scanning the darkness ahead. "Stay focused." Finally, they reached the central hub, a vast underground chamber that once served as a bustling transit center. Now it was eerily deserted. The platforms were empty, the tracks silent. Lucius signaled for his men to halt, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. "Spread out, but stay close," he ordered. "This feels like a trap." The Deathcallers moved cautiously into the chamber, their weapons trained on every shadow. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of their equipment. Lucius's HUD flickered with data, but there was no sign of the enemy. "Centurion, this doesn't feel right," one of his men whispered over the comms. "I know," Lucius replied, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the empty space. "They've drawn us in here for a reason." He motioned for a squad to check the surrounding tunnels, but before they could move, the trap was sprung. Hidden doors in the walls burst open, and a torrent of enemy soldiers poured into the chamber. The Deathcallers reacted instantly, forming a defensive perimeter and opening fire. "Hold your ground. Take them down," Lucius shouted. The battle was fierce and chaotic. The confined space of the central hub amplified every explosion, every scream. The enemy attacked from all sides, their numbers overwhelming. Lucius fought with a grim determination, his plasma rifle cutting down enemies with ruthless efficiency. Despite their superior training and firepower, the Deathcallers were outnumbered and outflanked. Lucius could see his men falling, their armor and skills not enough to stem the tide. He sent out a distress call, hoping the other Centurions could reach them in time. "Centurion Varro to all units. We're under heavy attack at the central hub. Need immediate assistance." The response was immediate. "Hold on, Lucius. We're on our way. ETA 2 minutes." 2 minutes felt like an eternity as the battle raged on. The Deathcallers fought with everything they had, their resolve unwavering. Lucius moved through the chaos, rallying his men, keeping their morale high despite the dire situation. Finally, the sound of reinforcements reached them. The other 2 Centurions charged into the chamber, their combined firepower turning the tide. The enemy, caught between 2 forces, faltered and broke. The Deathcallers pressed the advantage, cutting down the remaining hostiles with ruthless precision. As the dust settled, Lucius took stock of his men. 24 had fallen, a heavy loss for the elite unit. The central hub, now secured, was a scene of devastation. "Status report," Lucius ordered, his voice heavy with fatigue and sorrow. All clear, sir. Enemy is retreating. Casualties are high, but we hold the hub, a sergeant replied. Lucius nodded, his mind already shifting to the next phase. Regroup and rearm. We need to push on. The mission isn't over yet. With the central hub secured, the Deathcallers prepared for the next step. The battle for Aradia continued, and Lucius Varro was determined to see it through to the end. The Deathcallers had barely regrouped when the true scope of the trap became evident. The faint hum of machinery echoed through the cavernous metro hub, followed by the sound of hidden doors sliding open. Enemies poured in from all sides, a coordinated assault designed to crush them. Incoming. Defend our position, Lucius Varro shouted, raising his plasma rifle and firing into the advancing horde. The enemy forces were vast, far larger than anticipated. They moved with deadly coordination, each wave relentless and more determined. Plasma bolts and bullets flew through the air, the confined space amplifying every explosion and scream. Lucius's Centuria fought with ferocity, their superior training evident in every movement. They formed a tight defensive perimeter, their weapons blazing, but the enemy numbers were overwhelming. Hold the line. Do not let them break through, Lucius commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Deathcallers responded with discipline, their flamethrowers and grenades creating walls of fire and shrapnel. Enemies fell in droves, but for every one they cut down, two more seemed to take their place. Lucius knew they couldn't hold out much longer without reinforcements. Centurion Varro to all units, we're under heavy attack at the central hub. Need immediate assistance, Lucius barked into his comm. The enemy pressed harder, sensing victory. Lucius moved through the fray, rallying his men and firing with deadly precision. His HUD flashed with warnings, tracking the dwindling ammo and the rising number of casualties. The Deathcallers were taking heavy losses, and the situation was dire. Just as hope seemed to be slipping away, the sound of dropships filled the air. The other two Centurias arrived, descending from the metro entrances like avenging angels. Their combined firepower was overwhelming, and they hit the enemy with the full force of their might. Reinforcements incoming. Hold strong for just a few more seconds, Lucius urged his men, his spirits lifting. The arrival of the reinforcements turned the tide. The newly arrived Centurias unleashed a barrage of plasma fire and rockets, their disciplined ranks adding fresh energy to the beleaguered defenders. The enemy, caught between two forces, faltered and began to break. Push them back. Drive them out, Lucius shouted, leading the charge. The Deathcallers surged forward, their combined might overwhelming the enemy. Flamethrowers turned narrow corridors into infernos, and grenades blasted entrenched positions apart. The coordinated assault that had threatened to crush them was now being dismantled piece by piece. Lucius fought with a renewed vigor, his plasma rifle cutting through the enemy ranks. He moved with purpose, his every action inspiring his men to press on. The enemy, seeing their numbers decimated and their lines broken, began to retreat. Keep up the pressure. Don't let them regroup, Lucius ordered. The Deathcallers pursued the fleeing enemy, cutting them down as they ran. The once overwhelming horde was now a scattered, retreating rabble. The central hub, moments ago a scene of chaos and near defeat, was now a battlefield firmly under Deathcaller control. As the last of the enemy fled or lay dead, Lucius took a moment to catch his breath. He surveyed the scene, noting the heavy losses his Centuria had suffered. 24 men had fallen, their bodies a stark reminder of the cost of war. But they had held the line, and with the reinforcements they had turned what seemed like certain defeat into a hard-fought victory. Status report, Lucius demanded, his voice echoing in the now quiet hub. Casualties are high, sir, but we hold the hub, a sergeant reported, his tone grim yet resolute. The enemy is retreating. Lucius nodded, a mixture of relief and sorrow washing over him. Secure the area and tend to the wounded. We need to prepare for the next phase. With the immediate threat neutralized, the Deathcallers began to regroup and rearm. The battle for Aradia was far from over, but this victory had given them a crucial foothold. Lucius knew they couldn't rest for long. The enemy command still eluded them, and the city was still a war zone. Prepare to move out, Lucius ordered, his voice firm. We need to find those generals and finish this. The Deathcallers, despite their losses, were ready to continue the fight. They had faced the ambush and emerged victorious, their resolve only strengthened by the battle. As they prepared to descend further into the metro system, Lucius felt a renewed determination. The mission would be completed, no matter the cost. The aftermath of the ambush weighed heavily on Lucius Varro as he surveyed the battlefield. The central hub of the metro system, once a bustling center of civilian life, was now a grim tableau of war. 24 Deathcallers lay among the wreckage, their bodies testament to the ferocity of the fight. Lucius felt the loss of each soldier deeply. These were not just his men, but his brothers in arms, elite warriors who had trusted him to lead them to victory. The surviving troops gathered around him, their faces grim and their armor scorched. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city still engulfed in battle. Lucius could see the toll the losses had taken on his centuria, but he also saw the resolve in their eyes, a determination to honor their fallen comrades by completing the mission. "Form up," Lucius ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We mourn our dead, but we press on. Our mission is not yet complete." The Deathcallers formed a tight circle, their expressions resolute. Lucius knew he had to channel their grief and anger into a focused drive to succeed. He clenched his fist, feeling the weight of command and the responsibility to lead his men to victory. "We've suffered heavy losses, but we are not defeated," Lucius began, his voice echoing in the cavernous hub. "Each of our fallen brothers fought with honor and gave their lives to protect this Confederation. We will honor their sacrifice by seeing this mission through to the end. The enemy command is still out there, and it is our duty to find and destroy them." The troops nodded, their resolve visibly hardening. The loss had forged their determination into something unbreakable. They would fight not just for victory, but to avenge their fallen. "Sergeant, status report," Lucius commanded, turning to his second in command. "Sir, we've secured the area and accounted for our casualties," the sergeant replied. "Ammunition and supplies are running low, but we have enough to press on. The enemy has retreated for now, but they'll regroup soon." Lucius nodded, considering their next move. The metro system was a labyrinth, and the enemy command could be anywhere. They needed reliable information and a plan to navigate the treacherous tunnels. "Prepare to move out," Lucius ordered. "We need to push deeper into the metro. Our objective is the enemy command. Stay sharp and watch each other's backs. We move as one." The Deathcallers checked their weapons and gear, their movements efficient despite the weight of their losses. Lucius led them forward, his mind focused on the mission. Every step they took was a step closer to avenging their fallen comrades. As they advanced through the metro tunnels, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. The walls, covered in grime and graffiti, closed in around them, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The faint echoes of distant skirmishes reached their ears, a reminder that the city above was still a battleground. They moved cautiously, every sense attuned to potential threats. The tunnels were a maze of intersecting pathways and abandoned platforms, each one a potential ambush site. Lucius's HUD flickered with updates, mapping their progress and marking possible enemy locations. Suddenly, they came upon a small group of enemy soldiers. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Plasma bolts and grenades filled the air, and within moments the enemy lay dead. Among the bodies they found a map of the metro system, hastily marked with enemy positions and a likely command center. "Looks like we've got a lead," Lucius said, examining the map. "This is our chance. Let's move." With the map guiding them, the Deathcallers pressed on. The tunnels grew darker and more claustrophobic, but their resolve never wavered. They encountered sporadic resistance, each skirmish reminding them of the stakes. Every enemy they cut down brought them closer to their goal. Finally, they reached a heavily fortified section of the metro, the likely location of the enemy command. Lucius signaled for his men to halt and take cover. He studied the defenses, knowing that this would be their toughest fight yet. "Listen up," Lucius said, gathering his men. "This is it. The enemy command is just ahead. We'll hit them hard and fast, leave no room for them to regroup. Remember our fallen brothers and let their memory fuel your resolve, for the Confederation and for our comrades." The Deathcallers nodded, their faces set in grim determination. Lucius felt a surge of pride for his men. Despite the losses, despite the hardships, they stood ready to face whatever came next. On my mark, Lucius ordered, raising his plasma rifle. 3, 2, 1, go. They surged forward, weapons blazing, into the heart of the enemy stronghold. The final battle for Aradia had begun, and the Deathcallers were ready to see it through to the end. Lucius Varro knew they needed more than just brute force to find the enemy command. Intelligence was crucial, and that meant capturing enemy officers who could provide the information they needed. Breaking off from the main force, Lucius handpicked a squad of his best men and led them through the labyrinthine tunnels, their objective clear. They moved silently through the metro system, emerging into the war-torn streets above. The city of Aradia was a maze of destruction, every building a potential death trap. Lucius's squad advanced cautiously, using the ruins for cover as they searched for enemy officers. After hours of careful movement and skirmishes, they spotted a group of enemy soldiers entering a derelict building. Lucius signaled for his men to follow, their approach silent and deadly. The building, once an office complex, was now a decaying shell, its windows shattered and its walls scarred by gunfire. "Move in quietly," Lucius ordered. "We need them alive, at least for a little while." The Deathcallers infiltrated the building, their footsteps barely a whisper. They moved through the darkened hallways, weapons at the ready. As they neared the central room, they could hear the enemy soldiers speaking in hushed tones. Lucius signaled for his men to prepare for a breach. "On my mark," Lucius whispered. 3, 2, 1, go. They burst into the room, weapons trained on the startled enemy soldiers. The hostiles reached for their guns, but the Deathcallers were faster. In seconds, the room was secure, the enemy disarmed and surrounded. "We're looking for your command center," Lucius said coldly, his plasma rifle trained on the highest-ranking officer. "Talk, and maybe you live to see tomorrow." The officer's defiance was evident, but fear flickered in his eyes. Lucius motioned to one of his men, who stepped forward with a knife. The blade's gleam in the dim light was enough to break the officer's resolve. "Wait. I'll talk," the officer stammered. "The command center, it's in an armored bunker beneath the old government building, in Sector 12. Lucius nodded, satisfied. "Good, that's all we needed." He gave a curt signal, and his men moved swiftly, eliminating the captured soldiers with silent efficiency. There was no time for hesitation or mercy. The mission demanded total focus and ruthlessness. "Let's move out," Lucius ordered, his voice steely. "We have a command center to dismantle." With the new information, Lucius led his squad back through the metro tunnels, their pace quick but cautious. They regrouped with the main force, sharing the intel they had obtained. The news of the command center's location spread quickly, galvanizing the troops. The path to Sector 12 was fraught with danger. The enemy had fortified the approaches, aware that the Deathcallers would be coming. Lucius knew they had to strike hard and fast, giving the enemy no time to regroup. "Prepare for a full assault," Lucius ordered. "We hit them with everything we have. Flamethrowers, explosives, no holding back." The Deathcallers moved through the tunnels, emerging into the streets near the old government building. The structure loomed ahead, its once grand facade now a symbol of the enemy's defiance. Beneath it lay the armored bunker, the heart of the enemy's command. Lucius signaled for his men to take up positions. "On my mark, we go in hot. This is our chance to end this." The assault began with a barrage of grenades and rockets, the explosions tearing through the enemy's outer defenses. Flamethrowers turned the ground-level fortifications into blazing infernos. The Deathcallers charged forward, their weapons cutting down any resistance. The entrance to the bunker was heavily guarded, but the Deathcallers were unstoppable. Lucius led the charge, his plasma rifle blazing. The enemy fell back under the relentless assault, their defenses crumbling. "Clear the entrance. Breach that door," Lucius shouted. Explosives were set, and with a deafening blast, the entrance to the bunker was breached. The Deathcallers stormed in, their movements precise and deadly. The interior was a maze of corridors and rooms, each one a potential ambush site. "Stay focused," Lucius urged his men. We find the command center and take them out." They moved deeper into the bunker, encountering fierce resistance. The enemy fought with desperation, knowing that their command was at stake. But the Deathcallers' superior training and firepower prevailed, each skirmish bringing them closer to their goal. Finally, they reached the central command room. The door was heavily reinforced, but Lucius's men set charges and blew it open. The room beyond was filled with enemy officers, their faces a mix of shock and defiance. "Take them down," Lucius ordered, his voice echoing through the chaos. The Deathcallers moved in, their weapons unleashing a storm of plasma and fire. The enemy command stood no chance, their defenses overwhelmed by the elite troops. Within moments the room was secured, the enemy generals lying dead. Lucius took a breath, his heart pounding. The mission was nearly complete. The enemy command was neutralized, but the cost had been high. He looked around at his men, their faces grim but resolute. "We've done it," Lucius said quietly, a mix of relief and sorrow in his voice. "But our fight isn't over. Secure the area and prepare for extraction." The Deathcallers moved to secure the bunker, their thoughts with their fallen comrades. The battle for Aradia had taken a heavy toll, but they had struck a decisive blow against the enemy. Lucius knew they had honored their fallen brothers, and he vowed to see the mission through to its final victory. The bunker was secured, but Centurion Lucius Varro knew that their mission was not yet complete. The final assault lay ahead, and it would be their most challenging battle yet. The Deathcallers gathered in the dimly lit armory, their faces set with determination. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, the sounds of weapons being prepped echoing off the walls. "Check your gear," Lucius ordered, his voice steady but firm. "This next push will be the hardest. Make sure you're ready for anything." The Deathcallers moved with practiced efficiency, donning their masks and adjusting their armor. The masks, designed for both protection and intimidation, gave them a fearsome, almost otherworldly appearance. Each soldier double-checked their weapons, ensuring every plasma rifle, grenade, and blade was in perfect working order. "Load up on extra explosives," Lucius instructed. "And make sure your flamethrowers are fully fueled. We'll need every bit of firepower we have." The soldiers followed his commands, loading their packs with additional grenades and fuel canisters. The flamethrowers, already deadly in their standard form, were now primed to unleash an inferno on their enemies. Lucius inspected his own gear, feeling the weight of each piece of equipment. Every item was a tool, a means to achieve their objective and honor their fallen comrades. As the preparations continued, Lucius moved to the front of the room, where he could address his men. He removed his helmet, revealing a face marked by battle and resolve. The Deathcallers gathered around, their attention fully on their leader. "Deathcallers," Lucius began, his voice carrying the weight of his conviction. "We stand on the brink of our final assault. This mission has tested us in ways we never imagined. We faced overwhelming odds, suffered heavy losses, and fought through the very heart of this city." He paused, letting his words sink in. The eyes of his men, visible through their mask visors, reflected their determination and readiness. "Our brothers have fallen, but they did not die in vain," Lucius continued. "Their sacrifices brought us to this moment. The enemy command lies ahead, hiding beneath an old government building. This is our chance to strike the final blow, to bring down their leadership and end this conflict." The room was silent, the weight of his words pressing on every soldier's heart. "We are the Deathcallers," Lucius said, his voice rising. "We are the elite, the best the Drydus Confederation has to offer. Our duty is not just to fight, but to win. To protect our people, our way of life. Today we honor our fallen by finishing what they started. Today we show the enemy the true meaning of fear." He looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each soldier. "You know your duty. You know the honor of the Deathcallers. Let's make sure the enemy never forgets it. For the Confederation, for our fallen brothers, for victory." A chorus of determined voices echoed his final words. "For the Confederation, for our fallen brothers, for victory." The Deathcallers, their resolve unshaken, moved to their positions. They were ready for the final push, their minds and bodies prepared for the battle ahead. Lucius donned his helmet, the HUD flickering to life, and led his men out of the armory. The old government building loomed in the distance, its fortified structure a symbol of the enemy's last stand. The path to victory was clear, but it would be a path forged in fire and blood. "Move out," Lucius commanded, his voice filled with unwavering resolve. The Deathcallers advanced, their weapons at the ready, their hearts steeled for the final assault. The city of Aradia, scarred by conflict, would soon witness the culmination of their mission. Lucius Varro and his elite troops were ready to face whatever awaited them, determined to achieve victory at any cost. The old government building stood as a grim monument to the enemy's desperation, its fortified walls bristling with defenses. Centurion Lucius Varro led his Deathcallers to the entrance, their weapons ready, their minds focused. The final assault was about to begin, and there would be no turning back. "Set the charges," Lucius ordered, his voice calm and commanding. The Deathcallers moved with practiced precision, placing explosives at key points along the fortified entrance. The enemy had turned the building into a fortress, but the elite troops were undeterred. They knew that their strength lay in their relentless determination and superior firepower. "Charges set," Centurion, one of his men, reported. "Stand back," Lucius commanded, and his troops took cover behind the remnants of a nearby wall. With a nod, Lucius triggered the explosives. The charges detonated with a thunderous roar, the shock wave shaking the ground beneath their feet. The fortified entrance crumbled, debris and dust filling the air. As the smoke cleared, the path into the enemy command center lay open. "Move in." "Go, go, go," Lucius shouted, leading the charge. The Deathcallers surged forward, their flamethrowers and plasma rifles blazing. They stormed through the breached defenses, unleashing fire and fury upon the enemy. The initial shock of the explosion had left the defenders disoriented, but they quickly rallied, fighting back with a desperate ferocity. The general's guards, elite soldiers in their own right, formed a defensive line. They fought with determination, but they were no match for the Deathcallers. Lucius moved through the chaos, his plasma rifle cutting down enemies with ruthless efficiency. Flames roared as his men wielded their flamethrowers, turning the narrow corridors into blazing infernos. "Push forward." "Don't let them regroup," Lucius commanded, his voice cutting through the din of battle. The Deathcallers advanced relentlessly, their training and coordination overpowering the enemy's resistance. Explosions rocked the building as grenades and rockets found their marks, reducing fortified positions to rubble. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning materials and the screams of the dying. As they moved deeper into the building, the enemy's resistance grew more desperate. The general's guards fought with everything they had, but they were being systematically overwhelmed. Lucius's men moved with lethal precision, clearing room after room with unyielding determination. "Secure the command room," Lucius ordered, pointing to a heavily fortified door at the end of the corridor. The Deathcallers set charges, and with a deafening blast the door was breached. They stormed into the command room, their weapons ready. Inside, the enemy generals and their remaining guards stood defiant, a last line of defense. "Take them down," Lucius shouted. The battle in the command room was fierce and chaotic. Plasma bolts and flames filled the air, the confined space amplifying the intensity of the fight. The enemy generals, realizing their end was near, fought with a desperate fury. But the Deathcallers were relentless, their superior skills and firepower cutting through the defenders. Lucius engaged the enemy commanders directly, his plasma rifle blazing. He moved with the precision and speed of a seasoned warrior, each shot finding its mark. Around him, his men fought with equal ferocity, their flamethrowers turning the room into an inferno. Within minutes, the battle was over. The enemy generals lay dead, their bodies scattered among the ruins of their command center. The last remnants of the enemy's leadership had been eradicated. Lucius took a moment to catch his breath, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He looked around at his men, their faces set with grim satisfaction. They had done it. The mission was complete. "Secure the area," Lucius ordered, his voice steady. "Make sure there are no remaining threats." The Deathcallers moved through the smoldering ruins, checking for any surviving enemies and securing their position. Lucius felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. They had achieved their objective, but the cost had been high. As the smoke began to clear, Lucius removed his helmet, his face marked by exhaustion and determination. He looked at his men, his brothers in arms, and felt a surge of pride. "We've done it," he said quietly, but his words carried the weight of their victory. "The enemy command is no more. The city of Aradia is ours." The Deathcallers stood amidst the ruins, their mission complete, their honor intact. They had faced the fires of battle and emerged victorious, a testament to their strength and resolve. The memory of their fallen comrades lingered in their hearts, a reminder of the price of victory and the honor of the Deathcallers. Inside the smoldering remains of the enemy command center, the Deathcallers moved with deadly precision. Every corner of the room was a potential threat, and they left no stone unturned in their ruthless sweep. The enemy generals, the masterminds behind the occupation of Aradia, lay dead amidst the wreckage, their bodies testament to the Deathcallers' relentless efficiency. Lucius Varro scanned the room, his plasma rifle trained on any sign of movement. The command center, once the nerve center of the enemy's operations, was now a scene of utter devastation. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of burning materials, mingled with the metallic tang of blood. "Leave no survivors," Lucius ordered, his voice cold and unyielding. "We end this now." The Deathcallers fanned out, their weapons at the ready. Any remaining enemy soldiers were dispatched without hesitation. The elite troops showed no mercy, their resolve unshaken by the carnage around them. Every enemy they encountered was cut down, every hidden threat neutralized. Explosions rocked the bunker as the Deathcallers employed grenades and rockets to clear the way. Lucius led the charge, his plasma rifle unleashing a torrent of deadly energy. Each step forward was marked by the sound of weapons fire and the cries of the dying. "Lucius, we've got charges set on the remaining fortifications," one of his men reported. "Ready to detonate on your command." "Do it," Lucius replied without hesitation. The charges went off in a series of deafening blasts, the shockwaves rattling the very foundations of the bunker. Walls crumbled, and the enemy's last defenses were obliterated. The Deathcallers moved through the smoke and debris, ensuring that no enemy remained. Lucius's HUD flickered with updates from his men, each one confirming the elimination of another enemy position. The command center was being systematically dismantled, the enemy's infrastructure torn apart piece by piece. The mission was nearly complete, and Lucius could feel the weight of victory approaching. "Keep pushing forward," Lucius urged his men. "We don't stop until every enemy is dead." The Deathcallers pressed on, their relentless assault leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The enemy's desperate attempts to mount a counteroffensive were swiftly crushed. Lucius's plasma rifle cut through the chaos, each shot precise and deadly. In the heart of the command center, they found the enemy's final holdout, a fortified room, heavily guarded and bristling with weaponry. The Deathcallers approached with caution, their flamethrowers and explosives at the ready. "Set charges on the door," Lucius ordered. "We'll breach and clear. No hesitation." The charges were placed, and with a nod from Lucius, they detonated. The door was blown off its hinges, and the Deathcallers stormed in. The enemy soldiers inside fought with the desperation of cornered animals, but they were no match for the elite troops. Flames roared as the Deathcallers unleashed their flamethrowers, turning the room into an inferno. Grenades and rockets followed, the explosions tearing through the enemy's final defenses. The generals, already wounded and surrounded, were cut down without hesitation. Lucius showed no mercy, his plasma rifle delivering the killing blow to each of them. The room fell silent, the only sounds the crackling of flames and the distant echoes of battle. The enemy command was obliterated, their leadership eradicated. The mission, so costly and arduous, was nearly complete. Lucius looked around at his men, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They had fought through hell and emerged victorious, their determination unbroken. The cost had been high, but they had achieved their objective. "Secure the area," Lucius ordered, his voice steady. "Make sure no threats remain." The Deathcallers moved through the wreckage, their weapons at the ready. They checked every corner, every crevice, ensuring that no enemy survived. The command center, once a symbol of the enemy's power, was now a shattered ruin. Lucius felt a surge of pride for his men. They had shown the true strength and resolve of the Deathcallers, completing their mission with unmatched ferocity. The city of Aradia, scarred and battered, would soon be free of the enemy's grip. As the flames died down and the smoke began to clear, Lucius knew that their mission was nearly at an end. The enemy was defeated, their command structure annihilated. The Deathcallers had proven their worth once again, their honor and duty fulfilled. "Mission nearly complete," Lucius said quietly, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. "We've done it." The Deathcallers, standing amidst the ruins of their victory, nodded in silent agreement. They had shown no mercy, and they had won. Now, all that remained was to ensure the security of the city and honor the memory of their fallen brothers. With the enemy command annihilated, Centurion Lucius Varro stood amidst the ruins of the once impenetrable bunker, taking a moment to assess the situation. The acrid scent of smoke and charred metal lingered in the air, mingling with the silent echoes of the battle that had raged through the night. Around him, the Deathcallers moved with methodical precision, securing the area and checking for any lingering threats. "Status report," Lucius called out, his voice steady despite the exhaustion that tugged at him. One of his sergeants approached, his face grim. "5 more of our men have fallen, sir. The area is secure, but the cost was high." Lucius nodded, the weight of their losses pressing heavily on his shoulders. 29 of the Confederation's finest had given their lives in the brutal campaign to reclaim Aradia. The price of victory had been steep, but it was a price they had been willing to pay. He looked around at the remaining Deathcallers, their faces a mix of weariness and determination. They had fought with unparalleled courage and skill, and their efforts had not been in vain. "We've done it," Lucius said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "We've secured a critical victory for the Confederation." He signaled for extraction, sending a coded message to the dropships that had been orbiting the area, waiting for the signal to retrieve them. As the message was sent, Lucius allowed himself a moment to reflect. The battle for Aradia had been one of the toughest fights of his career, but it had also been one of the most important. The enemy's command structure was shattered, their forces in disarray. The city, though scarred and battered, could begin to rebuild. The sound of approaching dropships broke his reverie. The sleek, black silhouettes of the stealth craft appeared over the horizon, their engines a low hum that promised safety and extraction. Lucius watched as they descended, their hatches opening to receive the weary warriors. "Form up and prepare for extraction," Lucius ordered, his voice firm. "We're going home." The Deathcallers moved with disciplined efficiency, gathering their fallen comrades and preparing for the journey back. Each body was handled with the utmost care and respect, a silent testament to the bond they shared and the sacrifices they had made. As they waited for their turn to board the dropships, Lucius found himself thinking of the fallen. He remembered their faces, their voices, the camaraderie they had shared. Each loss was a wound, a scar that would never fully heal. But it was also a reminder of the price of freedom and the honor of their duty. The dropships began to lift off, carrying the Deathcallers away from the battlefield. Lucius was among the last to board, his gaze lingering on the devastated city of Aradia. They had brought fire and fury, but also the hope of a new beginning. The enemy had been driven out, and the city could start to heal. As the dropship's hatch closed and the craft ascended into the sky, Lucius felt a sense of closure. The mission was accomplished. The Deathcallers had proven their worth once again, securing a crucial victory for the Drydus Confederation. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, their honor and duty intact. "Good work," everyone, Lucius said over the comms, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and solemnity. "The Confederation owes you a debt of gratitude. Rest now and remember our fallen brothers. They will not be forgotten." The dropship sped through the atmosphere, leaving the war-torn city behind. Lucius closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of rest. The battle was over, but the war continued. The Deathcallers would be ready, as they always were, to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For now, though, they had earned their respite. The Deathcallers had once again proven their worth, and the Confederation would remember their sacrifice and valor. The price of victory had been high, but it was a price they were willing to pay for the honor of the Drydus Confederation and the future of its people. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.